I will now quickly move to Mr. Tanmay Bishnoi, who is Head Standards and Research in Skill Council for Green Jobs. In fact, Tanmay would give you a very brief idea of what we have been doing and how we project green jobs in the entire sector.
So what? It's good to come towards the end of a session when you can actually back up your numbers, back up your presentations with the previous speakers who have already spoken about it. Just to give you a flair of what we are going to talk about, I'm going to touch base with almost all the previous speakers who have spoken. So Dr. Chandan Chaudhary, who talked about the changing character of jobs, on how the jobs are going to change and the attitude's going to change. Similarly, Sandeep talking about reskilling. Omkar talking about, again, the changing character of jobs and how we should look at the future of jobs. Professor Akiyama on talking of green jobs and how renewable energy and electric mobility are linked. So I'm going to touch base with almost all of the topics together. Just seeing how India is looking at green jobs. So this is how Skill Council for Green Jobs, which is the apex body for standards and certification for green skills in India, this is how we have characterized different bucketed green jobs into three main verticals. One is renewable power, which talks about all renewable energy technologies. Then environment, forest and climate change, which talks about water and waste management in particular. And then sustainable cities and transport, which talks about smart cities, green buildings, and electric mobility. So this is how different sectors have been classified. And what we have to do when we are looking at skills or jobs is, we're looking from the demand side, seeing from where the demand is coming, then back it up with the supply so that the demand supply can be met. In all of these sectors, we are looking at fresh skilling, reskilling of existing, and upskilling as well. So we're looking at all three verticals of skilling in all these scenarios. Where are we coming from? We're coming from basically the push coming from the different Government of India missions on Swachh Bharat, which talks about waste management, Make in India, Startup India, Skill India, Smart Cities, Amrut, electric mobility, National Solar Mission. I mean, almost in all sustainable development goals, linked to all of them, there have been missions started by GOI. And that is where the demand is also coming for the business to take up, and that is where the jobs are coming up. If you look at India's NDC, which talks about to reduce emissions intensity by 35% by 2030, I mean, which directly correlates to almost 25 to 28% of renewable energy coming into the total energy mix. Similarly, 40% of electric power from GCF, new jobs with carbon reduction of carbon dioxide, and to adopt climate change mitigation techniques. I mean, linking to all of these, there have been a lot of disruption technologies which have come up. I mean, people ask usually, what is happening? What is a disruption in renewable energy? I mean, the pure answer is renewable energy is the disruption to conventional energy. I mean, we're talking of conversion of total energy into renewable energy systems. And we're almost looking at 20% penetration, which has already happened. And by 2030, we're almost looking at 35-40% penetration of renewable energy systems. That is disruption. Now, what kind of jobs, what kind of skills will be required to cater to that disruption? That's what we have to talk about. Similarly, for transportation, I mean, electric mobility. I mean, we are so used to conventional electricity of diesel, petrol, and now CNG, which came up. And with CNG now, there are many other biofuels and electric vehicles combined together. I mean, that is disruption in transportation. Robotics, 3D printing, nanotechnology, that's another disruption in the manufacturing sector. But are we all ready to adapt to that disruption? I mean, that is, we all talked about Industry 4.0. We are going to talk about Industry 4.0 in the next session as well. One thing which we should think of. I mean, there was a report by World Development Report recently which talked about the type of jobs and how they are going to change. So if you look at the combination of technology, know-how, problem solving, and critical thinking, which we have been narrated in the previous speakers as well, I mean, those are the kind of skills which will be required for collaborative approach. Declining cost of machines will again put low-skill jobs at risk. I mean, I mean, semi-skilled, low-skilled, may not be there. But yes, jobs will be there. But what kind of jobs? I mean, in the informal economy, I mean, almost 2.2 billion people out of the 3.5 billion global workforce is working in informal sector. Who's talking about that? Why are we not talking about that? We are talking of only on the formal sector. Where are those jobs going to go? I mean, the ultimate objective is reskill or upskill. I mean, fresh skilling, how much new workforce can we deploy in that sector? And as previous speakers talked about, investing in human capital is it should be the top priority for almost all head states, policymakers, and the industry. With that context, I mean, we do skill gap analysis qualitatively and quantitatively almost every year. We have multiple reports which have been published. They are on our website. Greening India's Workforce, Skill Gaps Report for Solar, Wind, and Small Hydro, and other renewable energy systems. We had an interaction with almost 128 plus industries working in the renewable energy sector and electric mobility sector, and seeing where the gaps are. This is what we found out. I mean, particularly to the renewable energy scenario, majority of the jobs are coming in the solar sector. Almost to the tune of 70% plus jobs in the total renewable energy is coming from solar. Now, with that, we are almost looking at 17 lakh jobs by 2030 just from the renewable energy sector. I mean, this has been proofread, this has been proved, this has been validated by almost all requirements coming from the industry directly, which is, again, when I said, we are coming from the demand side and not from the supply side. Now, this is a case study which I want to show about how we are looking at different sectors. Now, the same approach we have taken for all green job sectors. First, we find out where the gaps are. That is based on different stakeholder interactions. Now, this is a study which we did in 2016, and on the left side of it is a study which was done in 2018, in which the regional mapping of skills was also done on a state basis. Now, this is almost 9 lakh jobs, 7.8 lakh by 2025, and 9 lakh jobs by 2030, just in solar sector. I mean, where are these jobs coming from? Majority of them are coming from reskilling. So skilling is one aspect of it, which is kind of Surya Mitra or solar installation, operation and maintenance roles. That's one way to look at skills. The other way is the upskilling of existing people. So this is kind of a career map or an occupational map which have been developed for the solar sector. Now, if you look at any of the top layers level, so on the left side are the national skills qualification framework levels, which is what we use in India, and any developing nation in the world is using this similar framework. Some say quality competency framework, some say qualifications framework. In India, we say NSQF, which is, again, benchmarking these framework standards with international standards to deploy. If you look at any role level 7 and above, or even level 6 and above, these are almost all roles of reskilling. Skilling or fresh skilling comes at level 2 to level 5. Now, with this, we've made a framework of building blocks of what is required to sustain that development or sustain that growth. What's the institutional framework which now exists? Training partners framework, we have about 550 plus training institutions across 27 states. Trainers pool, we have over 2,000 plus trainers where we do training of trainers. Curriculum for skills and entrepreneurship development, we have almost about 47 national standards which have been developed in different aspects of green jobs. Placement pool and enterprise creation, we have tie-up with multiple industries who hire those skilled workforce. Best practices and infrastructure build-up. Now, which is what we are incorporating in the standards. With this, we collaborated with almost all development agencies. We have been doing work with GIZ, we have been doing work with USAID. One particularly, we have recently done a work with World Bank, on which we are doing reskilling of existing workforce in the distribution companies or utility engineers on how to integrate rooftop with their existing grid, and how the fluctuation or the variable frequency can be catered to by them. What are the business models? How they can utilize those technical skills for smooth penetration of solar. Similarly, with bankers, we are working on how to evaluate those renewable energy proposals. Conventionally, they know how to sanctioning loan. But if we look at dedicated to the sector, what kind of new aspects they should look at, that is where we find bridging the gap. And that is what we have been doing in almost 17 states of India under the World Bank program, in which we are working with State Bank of India and other national banks, 17 DISCOMs, 17 state DISCOMs, along with other private DISCOMs, and 500 plus entrepreneurs working in that state to develop different business models for them. We have developed different practitioners' guides, which are now available and being utilized by almost all of them. So this is how sector by sector we do. We do a skill gap, we do a quantitative, qualitative, then link it to the industry, then we find where the gap is, develop the curriculum, develop the content, and then bridge the gap with the practitioners' guides which can be utilized. A similar application we have been doing, we have started off in the electric mobility sector as well, where we are following the NITI Ayog's whole system approach to mobility transition. I mean, where and how different aspects are going to be.
Tanmay, I can take liberty with you.
Yes, sir. 2 minutes.
Very,
almost.
Somehow, this is the disadvantage with the
last one.
The last speakers. But we have 2 more speakers, so I would request
surely, sir,
to
2
wind
minutes.
up.
Yeah. So coming to a close, this is where the automobile industry is today. I mean, almost 80% of the total automobile industry is coming from the two-wheeler sector. I mean, and again, we are talking of electric cars and electric vehicles. We should be talking of electric scooters. I mean, where the majority of the automobiles are. With that, we are developing a occupational map for electric mobility also, charging stations and R&D, which are coming up on a big way. So I'm going to wind up to my concluding slide. These reports are available, and the electric mobility report will be available by the end of next month, and all renewable energy reports are available on our website. Towards where we say are the gap, or how to fill that gap, or where success is. Transformed, economically sustainable and viable green enterprises. I mean, that is where the maximum jobs and maximum skills are going to be. Skilled and unskilled and reskilled youth, which we say suits and geeks. I mean, somebody has to be a technical person, somebody has to be a management person. Joining the two, that is where the sustainable partnerships and scalability can come for the growth of this sector. Thank you.